Welcome. You're about to listen to a presentation by Ülge Uğurlu, Senior Project Advisor and Local Government Expert at VNG International. The presentation of Ülge was part of the program of the fourth panel organized by Çare, as part of the panel series Turkey and Syria after the earthquakes. Ülge Uğurlu is a senior consultant with extensive experience in technical assistance projects on local government and public administration reform. Ülge received her bachelor's degree in city and regional planning and also her master's degree in European studies from the Middle East Technical University. She holds a Master of Science in Regional and Urban Planning Studies from the London School of Economics and Political Science and a CAS in Public Governance and Administration from ETH Zurich. Since 2005, she has been providing support to central and local level institutions and civil society in Turkey in cooperation with national and international counterparts. She has been working for VNG International since 2011, an international cooperation agency of the Association of Netherlands Municipalities. She has been an associated expert of VNG International since 2017. In addition to local administration reform, improving participatory strategic governance at local level, capacity building in governorates, integration of disadvantaged persons in employment and social support services, strengthening local investment planning capacity with the participation of local actors, improving local government resilience, promoting social inclusion were also among the specific topics of her contributions to institution building. The Participation Task Force's approach that was designed and implemented in cooperation with the Union of Municipalities of Turkey between 2020 and 2022 was internationally recognized as a leading innovation by the OECD. Currently, Ülge serves as the team leader of the Disaster Response, Recovery and Reconstruction Project of VNG International, focusing on the municipalities affected by the earthquakes of February 2023.
We have come to face with a horrible disaster almost 9 months ago, and I'd like to start by honoring the memories of all people who lost their lives and offering condolences to all the survivors. And of course, I'd like to extend my gratitude to the esteemed founders and members of the amazing Çare team, and also, of course, to the contributors for taking action and creating this valuable opportunity to combine our resources. I listened to all the presentations from the first 3 panels and also, of course, today's presentations with great interest. So I'm much grateful to each and every one of the distinguished professionals who made very important contributions with their highly amazing and inspirational presentations. And altogether, I believe they provide a well-rounded learning and thinking opportunity and many possibilities for further collaboration. So to be able to link what has already been said to what I'm about to say, here are some highlights from the first 3 panels of Çare, which I believe are worth reiterating because, I mean, we could actually have separated discussions on each and every one of them. My main takeaways were the emphasis on local level, the emphasis on working with government, working with authorities holding public power and public funds, the emphasis on process, the emphasis on the varying time perspectives of different parties, the emphasis on working with people on the ground, and the emphasis on disseminating information to the general public. I wanted to highlight these because, in a nutshell, this is basically what we are trying to do in our modest project that we're currently implementing in the disaster area. How this project came to being is that the International Cooperation Agency of Netherlands Municipalities, in short, VNG International, already had a long-standing history of fruitful cooperation with Turkish counterparts from both central levels and local levels, including ministries, governorates, and municipalities, of course, and in particular with the Union of Municipalities of Turkey as its direct counterpart. Throughout the years, we implemented many successful technical assistance projects, trying to strengthen the institutional capacities of municipalities and also contributing to good governance at the local level. And on the day of the disaster, my Dutch colleagues were among the first ones reaching out for help, and a big national campaign was immediately initiated, and VNG specifically invited Dutch municipalities to make a contribution. So here I'd like to sincerely thank the people of the Netherlands and the Dutch municipalities for the continuing support they're providing to response and recovery, and also to Hero 555, which is a foundation of cooperating aid organizations in the Netherlands. So we immediately started developing a project. Our expertise at VNG International centers on mostly towards medium to long-term reconstruction, redevelopment, and we have a highly specific focus on local governments. That's why, in cooperation with the Union of Municipalities of Turkey, we developed a project for the municipalities in the disaster area. One of the main distinctive characteristics of our approach and project design is participatory task forces. These are basically working groups of 8 to 10 members, bringing together the elected officials. These are the municipal council members, the municipal officials, the appointed experts in the municipalities, and the civil society representatives around the same table. We first experimented with this approach within the scope of another project, the last project that we implemented just before the disaster. And our approach was internationally recognized as a leading innovation by the OECD Observatory for Public Sector Innovation. And for the current project, of course, we wanted to continue and broaden the experimentation. And we established participatory task forces in each pilot municipality that we are working in. And this such a three-party setup, these three groups sitting around the same table, is actually a first of its kind method of municipal participation, involving information exchange, consultation, and joint decision making. Since we had to operate in a post-disaster context, we decided to follow a phased approach. This phased approach gave the pilot municipalities a certain level of the chance for a certain level of operational recovery to be able to focus on medium to long-term reconstruction, and also to allow them to be able to benefit from the specific fields of expertise that we as VNG International can offer. And after completing the identification and preparation phase of the project as quick as possible, in the first phase, we focused on providing some emergency grants to the municipalities, and we directly asked them, what do you need? What would serve best to your activities at present? What would contribute to your ongoing efforts at the moment? This is another distinctive aspect of our intervention, is that we always turn to the municipalities and we ask them. And based on the different circumstances in each municipality, we received different responses. In Adana Seyhan, due to the highly risky building stock and the continuing trauma of disaster trauma of citizens there, reserve area turned out to be a priority. The officials in Seyhan municipality already had this idea of disaster greenhouses, which can be used for hydroponic farming and can also be converted to emergency shelter in a few hours. These disaster greenhouses can also be used in the case of not only earthquake, but also floods and forest fires, where settlements need to be evacuated partially or entirely. And in other periods, the produce from the greenhouses, some of it is going to be used in the municipal soup kitchen. Some of it is going to be used for parks and green areas in the city maintained by the municipality, some for producing marketable higher value-added products. And another interesting dimension of this approach is that involvement of women's cooperatives for additional income to households in needs and also involvement of people undergoing disaster trauma for therapeutic purposes. While you can see a lot of room for improvement at its current state, we believe that it's a highly encouraging start and a chance for learning by doing. So we are grateful to our colleagues in Seyhan. In Kahramanmaraş Metropolitan Municipality, at that moment, due to the high level of building damage and the continuing demolition process, specific equipment for the fire brigade turned out to be a priority at that moment. And we have recently delivered the first batch of this equipment to Kahramanmaraş Metropolitan Municipality. These are seismic, acoustic, under debris listening devices. And the staff of the Kahramanmaraş Fire Department received the necessary technical training for their use. As you can imagine, Kahramanmaraş Fire Brigade lost most of its equipment after the disaster. And they have an obligation to serve the entire province. So now they have both access and capacity to be able to use this crucial piece of equipment for saving more lives. And the other two batches of equipment we are going to be granting to Kahramanmaraş are hydraulic recovery kits and rescue struts. In Osmaniye, and due to the high influx of displaced people in need, the priority of the municipality at that moment turned out to be setting up its own soup kitchen instead of procuring meals from third parties. So now the municipality provides hot meals to 3,000 people per day via mobile delivery to the doorsteps of the people in need. Going back to our phased approach, after the completion of phase 1 towards the end of July, in the beginning of August, we initiated the second phase of our project, focusing on longer-term recovery and development. And as a first step, we started working on post-disaster scenario planning, as a result of which we aim to come up with participatory local recovery plans, which will then be the basis of our further activities in the coming year. Again, in line with our phased approach and the participatory methodology that we use, in the beginning of the project, at the outset, we kept the list of potential topics as broad as possible. Here you see temporary settlement strategies, reliable building stock inventory, post-disaster environmental protection, strengthening municipal disaster management plans and urban planning grants. But you don't see how, you don't see when, where exactly, or to what extent. For that, we are constantly in close consultation and collaboration with our participatory task forces to be able to tailor the technical assistance to the specific priority areas, priority teams, and needs of the municipality, so that our joint efforts can be as impactful and as sustainable as possible. Here are some photos from our first workshops with the participatory task forces, where we jointly discussed the post-disaster scenario planning. One of the key advantages of implementing external technical assistance projects with local teams like ours is that it provides a sandbox for experimenting with change, if not introducing change. Even the most simplest of a question that we ask to a local official gives a chance to that expert to stop and think, to explain, which might not be always the case in their busy daily routines, mostly structured by strict regulatory boundaries. For example, as part of our post-disaster scenario planning workshops, we visited an urban planning department of one of our pilots, and all we did was ask them what they do. And when they started explaining, we just asked a few more detailed questions, and all of a sudden, all municipal officials in the room came to a realization that their process is more code compliance, code enforcement on maps than actual urban planning. So when given the opportunity, the officials directly involved in implementation, directly involved in practice, they are able to not only identify the challenges, but also the changes required to overcome these challenges. I would like to finish my presentation by summarizing where we stand now and the way forward. And you see that where we stand is in separated rectangles, disconnected. And based on our interactions with our participatory task forces in the post-disaster scenario planning workshops, our observation was obviously at the local level, the expectation is a safe, livable, and economically vibrant settlement with a strong sense of character or identity, and for all this to be happening as fast and as cost-effective as possible. This is a natural, almost instinctive expectation, but of course, surely it's not realistic. All of this cannot happen all at once, and definitely not with the same processes from before the disaster. Definitely not with the separated rectangles. So what specific components of this dream we can have an impact on is a difficult question for us, but maybe an even more difficult question is what we need to do differently and what we can do differently to make cities safe, livable, and socioeconomically vibrant. While I was listening to the presentations from the previous panels, what I thought was all these highly knowledgeable people are not saying what they are saying because of the disaster. Exchanges like these are not happening only in the aftermath of a disaster, and this is not even the first disaster. Experts, professionals have been doing research, working and sharing their knowledge before the disaster too. So really, the most difficult question of all is, what can we do differently? Within the scope of our project, we are not trying to give answers. We are simply trying to ask questions to people holding the power. And our questions are mostly about processes, because governance is basically about processes. We all know that we have all the technical, administrative, and legal capacity for disaster prevention, but somewhere in the process of implementation, the quality of governance remains below average. Now, you see linked circles instead of separated rectangles. To improve the quality of governance, we are trying to enhance the collaboration with municipalities as much as possible, because whether we interact with them or not, work never stops. There is constantly things being decided and implemented by public authority on all fronts. So trying to integrate with the ongoing plans and actions can provide more opportunities to make concrete contributions, concrete impact, not only on the processes, but also on the outcomes as well. Looking at the way forward is basically looking at citizens as academicians, as experts, as practitioners. We need to both share knowledge with the citizens and get knowledge from them. We need to give assistance to the citizens and get assistance from them. What knowledge and assistance does a citizen have access to when choosing housing? I mean, do citizens really choose housing is another difficult question. I won't go there. But what knowledge and assistance does a citizen have when using housing, even living in a neighborhood? Do we provide enough information for a citizen to understand the reasons behind not being allowed to build higher than a certain height? Do we provide enough information to a citizen to understand why a certain area is designated as a green area by the municipality? And what kind of an interaction would that citizen have with that green area if that green area is created or even maintained in cooperation with the citizen? So at the root of many problems, there seems to be a problem with what makes sense to citizens. Many ordinary citizens have valuable, transferable knowledge, experience, expertise, but there seems to be quite a harsh divide between service provider and service beneficiary, decision maker and subject of the decision. Figuring out ways to engage citizens in the municipal or community-related processes might give us some clues at how we can stretch that strict divide between public authority and the public. And in any case, I just don't know how else it can be anyway, because we all hear identity as a big request from our pilot municipalities, but how can identity, how can attachment, how can ownership develop without having sufficient knowledge about a specific issue and having a say on the related decision mechanisms? In our discussions today as well, there are usually many references to code and policies and all those regulatory instruments. If code and policies are operating like a black box, the black box legal and bureaucratic procedures, in fact, they jeopardize the full adoption and implementation of the very code and policy. For example, we all listened from news and observed by ourselves that one of the main causes of building collapse in the disaster area was the load-bearing columns being taken down. And how many decision-making processes was there for these load-bearing columns to be taken down, and how many people it took to give the final order? These are, of course, all important questions, but at the end of the day, it probably took one poor construction worker to do the job. What I mean by making sense to ordinary citizen is that at no point, under no circumstances, that worker even thinks about hitting his sledgehammer to a load-bearing column. And speaking of code, I would like to end by referring to one last point that is commonly addressed when it comes to code compliance and implementation in general, and that is enforcement. Legislation is, of course, very important, and it usually sets the bare minimums, but also legislation most of the time works in a posterior manner. So setting an example, a good example, of course, is much, much important than enforcement, I believe. And these examples, they don't have to be grand examples. Even small-scale actions, little achievements can also be very useful, because in the end, cities are also made up of incremental actions over time and not overnight. So this is pretty much what I can squeeze into 15, 20 minutes from the world of practice with local governments. I very much appreciate your attention. Thank you very much.